never have enough time to play it all. You know everybody wants to walk in someone else's shoes. Everyone's forgotten who they are. Such a grind.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Otter Creek and Rio Grande. And the first video that I've produced in 2026. But this is the first thing I've done, you know, in the area of the workbench this year. Obviously, I've done some work on the backdrop. Now, I'm not going to discuss the backdrop in this video because I've got a whole nother video on everything I've done to this point. So I don't want to dig into it in any kind of detailed fashion, other to say that I felt like I couldn't move any more forward with this until I had some color on my mountain. So I really have three different projects kind of intertwining with themselves at the moment. And so I'm kind of bouncing back and forth in the timeline of how things are progressing. So in addition to the backdrop, I've also done a lot of work with the Sculpt-A-Mold on the plaster cloth. And I'm at a point now where I'm kind of down to a short list of things that have to take place before I can paint and before I can move any more forward with the mine scene. So I think I'm going to show a couple of pictures here, move the camera and let you kind of see the work I've done from a different angle where the shadows are working for us instead of against us. This is probably as good as it's going to get unless I did something crazy, and it still, you know, doesn't really show you exactly what everything looks like. But, you know, what I did is I went in and I accentuated what the cardboard and brown paper kind of already was showing me. And so there's going to be areas where I've allowed kind of a ledge to come out, and I kind of did my best to keep the strata, you know, kind of working in the same way that I've done everywhere else in this area. And it's just going to be a matter of painting it now and then working in where the dirt is going to be versus where the rock faces are. There were also areas where I pretty much just invented the rock work all on its own with Sculpt-A-Mold. So, you know, I tried to kind of match some of the stuff in here that falls in line with these foam pieces that fit in here. And I have not put them into the mountain, so to speak, yet, because I want to be able to paint both sides. So that's one of the things I'm going to try and accomplish here shortly is getting these, at least the backside, painted. One of the first things that I'm going to need to do is I've still got these large gaps in here in front of this landform that I need to address. And I think I'm going to do that with brown paper just kind of crumpled up and shoved in there, maybe with a little bit of glue on the back side of it, just to give a little interest and support to the Sculpt-A-Mold that I'll put over top of it. But before I do that, I really, because there's no way I'm going to be able to paint the back side of this after I do that, and because some of this will be seen from through a gap over here, I feel like I've got to kind of detail paint the back side of that. Let me take you around to the other side so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. Now, I've mentioned it before, but this up here will come in and interface somewhere right in here. So there's going to be a little bit of a window where a person could see some of this area. And you can also see that because this piece of foam was straight, I've also got a gap in here that's going to have to be filled You know, that's going to be a challenge in and of itself, but I think I can get my topside creeper in here and be able to do all of that after I get it painted. So that's kind of what I'm up against. I think I'll go ahead and show one more area that I'm going to try and accomplish this weekend, and that is over at the tunnel portal. This area, I need to kind of glue both these pieces, and even, no, those are glued. This piece and this piece are just in there, right? I need to get some power grab and put them in permanently, and then work in some sculpt to mold there to make them one seamless thing. And then I think I'm ready to paint the tunnel portal. And yeah, I think this is where I want to start with the painting, because there's going to be an obstruction here and lots of other things to kind of draw the eye. If I find out that I can't match the color from here to there well, then, you know, I might punt or something and think about how I'm going to deal with the foam, because right now I could still technically take out all the pieces of foam that I've got in right now. If I can't, you know, if it's just going to be a drastic difference of how you paint from one to the other, you know, I've got to find that out, and I guess I'm just going to go ahead and do it rather than testing. And as a final note, you know, I also need to adjust for sure this piece of foam and this piece of foam, because this piece of foam is two pieces. It needs to be one piece, and I want to add, I think I'm going to start with 10 feet. I want to add 10 feet to this so that I can bring the entire building out, still have a dock area, but at the same time have an area where someone can walk back and forth in front of the building. But in order to get it all on one sheet of foam, I'm going to have to recreate this piece of foam right here. So I'm going to do that, and I think that's going to kind of put everything where it needs to be to get started on the big chore of painting. I'm getting ready to get started painting, and I thought, you know, just in case there's some people who didn't watch the Katie project and maybe you're new to the channel, I just thought I would kind of outline what my process is and some of the colors that I'm using. So I've got yellow ochre and yellow oxide. I threw these up here just to kind of see what the differences were between the two. There's really not much, if any at all. This may actually be a branding thing. I'm using the yellow oxide from Liquitex. This was from a different company. It might be a little brighter than this, if anything. And then I've also got this provincial beige is what I have used on everything up to this point for my primary color. And I've known all along that wasn't going to work, because finding this is difficult, and all it is a medium beige. So I purchased some unbleached titanium, and if you mix it 50-50 with burnt umber, you end up with almost the exact same color. This is just a little bit darker. I think that can be taken care of by mixing in just a little bit more of this. And probably, truth be known, I'm going to be okay with some slight variations with all of these colors as I go, as long as it's not, you know, noticeably different from one section to another. Now I've got the burnt sienna and the raw sienna. You know, I kind of like the idea of maybe going with the raw sienna, because there is a lot of this color in some of my photographs. But I also think that the photograph I'm looking at has been manipulated in post. So I think I'm going to continue with this. You just have to be careful with this color. And then you got the burnt umber versus the raw umber. Again, I see very little difference. There might be a little extra red in there. And I'm also using this Payne's Gray, which has got a little bit of blue. And I think that does a good job of representing maybe some granite. And I use it pretty sparingly. Now, as far as mixing the colors go, my standard unit of mixing is 1 dollop. So that's a dollop, and then I'm going to put this much water. You can see where that first line is. That's how much water I'm going to use. And you can see this is the Payne's Gray. I've already mixed it up. You can see just exactly how thin it is. And it's not completely mixed up yet because I just got started. So I'm going to mix all this up, throw on some music, and we'll do some painting. Going to get started doing some things with the tunnel portal here. And, you know, this piece fits in there to kind of create the shape of the portal. And anything beyond this is going to be in shadow. This, for the most part, will be able to be seen. So I've got a line in here. I'm going to paint everything back that way, just, you know, a beige color, my chocolate milk color, because I think it's just going to be purely in shadow. So I'm not really concerned at all about any detail back there. That is probably good enough. Once you stick this piece in, and then of course at the same time, when all of the rest of this gets covered over, you're not going to see anything back there at all, unless I choose to put an LED. And even still, I don't think that, you know, there'll be enough light to show anything other than the texture of the walls there. So I'm going to let that dry. Now, these things, these are the finger rocks. This is how the area got its name, Finger Rock Pass. I'll let you use your imagination. This is the backside. So I've gone ahead and painted the backside, and I did a little experimentation where I went heavier with the yellows and the reds just to kind of see, and you can see the difference. And I think, you know, it might work if you had a specific geology that, you know, maybe there was a big vein of that particular color and over a larger area. But I think, you know, with what I'm going to be doing, I think that would make it look too spotted. So I know the light is terrible, isn't it? The nice subtle variation in color is what I'm going to have to go with. But those are the back sides, so you'll never see them. And I think I'm ready to finish painting this, you know, with the method that I want to paint it with, and some Sculptamold. I haven't decided whether I want to go in with the Sculptamold first and then paint, or go ahead and paint it now and do the Sculptamold later. I'm going to have to think about that. I've gone ahead and thrown some color on, and I apologize for not capturing any of this first little section on film. My battery on the camera died, and I just plugged it in and kept going. So what you're seeing here is, as you will remember, all of this was foam painted white. This piece is also a little chunk of foam. And then right in through here is where I transition with the Sculptamold this way, which is all Sculptamold. And, looking through the camera, a lot of this looks white, and it's really not. Me standing here in the space with the overhead lights as they are, it's definitely a beige going on cream color, which I like standing here. But as I look through the monitor on the camera, it does look like it's popping out as white. And you'll also notice that as we move away from the foam, that white cream color kind of dissipates. And I kind of recognized that as I was working on it. And there's a couple of places where I rubbed away and I got a little bit, I don't know, let me see, where you can kind of see where just rubbing away some of that wet paint brought it back. And that's going to be something that I'm going to have to kind of work on as I move forward if I want to continue with some of that color intermixed in. And I'll make a point about this. I like the color, and the reason I like the color is because it's not just 2 or 3 colors. Right, there's kind of a smorgasbord of colors going on there. I really like this. I think kind of better than I like this. But there's going to be a balance of trying to make sure that all of this, matches and doesn't look too strange. And that's going to be a trick. One of the things that happened, painting this, there's about 2 days difference between this area and this area. And the water evaporated out of the cups a little bit. So I had less water in this area than I did in this area. And so the main thing is that I think in this area, I'm going to mix up new color. And you've got to have all of this, I think, kind of working for you all at the same time, or at least to the best of your ability, so that you can continue to match colors. And, I didn't discuss a lot of, or really anything about the Sculptamold. And I think one of the things I will do moving forward is some of these areas are great because it creates a kind of a natural undercurrent of rock face. But then there's also places where I think you should probably smooth some of it out and have smoother areas as well. That way it's maybe a little easier to achieve some of these brighter rock areas because you can wipe them down with a cloth or something as you go. Now, I am going to do one more experiment. I think I'm going to try with this piece of rock. I carved this up in 15 minutes or so. It's 3 pieces glued together, and I'm going to try doing certain areas with paint only. I'm going to do an area with paint, then painted on with plaster, not Sculptamold, but plaster. And then I'm going to do an area that's just painted on with plaster, just to kind of see. And then I'm going to treat the whole thing with, my technique for the rock face, just to kind of see what I come up with. And I want to do that before I do anything moving further down the road. And as a final note in this particular segment, one of the things I learned in am doing the Katy project is I need to put in all of the larger rock material that should be at the base of this landform before I continue painting. I'm pretty sure I want to do that. So we'll see what happens next. As you can see, it's not impossible to kind of match the colors here, but definitely with the foam and even with really good primer paint on there, it takes a lot of successive washes, and I would say I'm probably still not even there on this piece. I will probably continue with a few more washes before I call it good, but it's going in the right direction. I'm going to move the camera and point out another thing. Now you can clearly see that from this point this way, there's definitely a more red hue to the earth. And you know, I would like to tell you that I did that intentionally, but that is not actually the truth. When I looked at trying to come up with the beige color, I did just a minimal amount of research online and discovered that if you mix unbleached titanium and raw umber, you will get kind of a medium beige, and that's what this is. If you mix unbleached titanium with burnt umber, this is the color you're going to get, which is not terrible. As I've mentioned before, all of the pictures I have of the Frying Pan River at Basalt, Colorado, it's a deep red. The hills are deep red, so I don't mind that. I think I do want to try and kind of make a gradual shift, so I think I'm going to go in here and create, you know, more passes with the with this color, which is the burnt umber and unbleached titanium. And then you can see this is the color that's with the raw umber, and it's just a slight difference, but once you start covering it on, you know, there's obviously difference. But this is the color I wanted, and that's the color I'm going to use moving forward. So I've still got a lot of things to do as far as sculpt and mold and things before I paint anything further this direction. But that's all I'm going to do in this video. So stay tuned and we'll see how this progresses.